Hello there, this is L24 World News Program, and these are the top headlines. Britain's biggest race strike in 30 years kicked off on Tuesday. Of thousands of staff walked out in this dispute over paid jobs that could pave the way for widespread industrial action. Macron's CAP fails to win absolute majority in parliament and will now seek alliances with other parties. President Volodymyr Zelensky, Ukraine, is engaged in complex negotiations to free its ports from Russian naval blockade. And according to officials, at least 84 people have died in landslides, lightning strikes, and flash floods across India and Bangladesh in the past week. Hello again and welcome. I'm Abdurrahim Kashur, and those were today's top stories. Britain's biggest nationwide rail strike for 30 years began today morning. Thousands of workers are expected to go on a strike demanding wages increase, but the UK government says that salaries raises will only drive inflation even higher. Nabil Khazini.
This is due to a shortage of train crew.
1 out of 2 lines closed and 4 out of 5 trains removed. Train stations in Britain woke up this morning with a shortage of trains rarely seen in the UK. For a generation, this is the biggest national railway strike, a movement that could bring the country to a halt.
And I should say I did avoid travelling in the morning. Well, I'm going to be late for work, but we did have some staff slip into the building last night so that they could help open up because I work in a hospital.
Completely understand why they're striking, but if we give a wage increase to the railways, then it's going to be doctors, nurses, and that's going to be inflationary. So I would probably think from the interest of the country to take the very unpleasant hit now, rather than have years and years and years of being in the same situation.
Tens of thousands of railways workers and the London Underground began the network's biggest strike action in more than 30 years to demand a 7.1% wage increase in the face of inflation.
We've now had offers from Network Rail and from the train operating companies, and the executive committee in this building has considered those offers and they've rejected both of them. The Network Rail one was rejected on Friday, and the train operating company one, which was only put to us today, has been rejected this afternoon.
Last-minute talks on Monday failed to make a breakthrough. The Rail Maritime and Transport Union says it will not accept rail firms' offer of a 3% raise, which is far below the rate of inflation currently running at 9%. However, Boris Johnson's government warned that big salaries raises will spark a wage price spiral, driving inflation even higher.
But if we're going to do these colossal investments, as we are and as we must, we've got to have reform. And we've got to have reform in the way the railways work, and it cannot be right.
Rail passengers across the country have been forced to stay at home after warnings to avoid all but essential travel. Unions, meanwhile, are warning of a summer of strikes as soaring inflation hits the pay packets of workers across the UK.
To a different matter now, the heavy rainy season in India and Bangladesh has killed at least 69 people over the past 2 weeks and resulted in floods that have left at least 9 million suffering losses in 36 districts across the two countries. According to experts, growing rain's frequency and intensity is resulted by climate change.
This kind of flood never happened before. In some cases, even the second story of buildings have been flooded. Many people have been skipping 2 to 3 meals because they can't cook anything. Some are going without water at home for 3 days. They have no food at home and can't go to the market to buy supplies. People are asking for a place just to stand.
In the African continent, another mass killing in the unstable Sahel area occurred over the weekend when rebels killed over 132 people in the nearby villages in central Mali. Islam Seed.
Recent attacks by rebels in central Mali have killed 132 civilians as one of the country's worst massacres, and the latest in a series of ongoing killings across the Sahel region.
The government of the Republic of Mali deeply regret to inform that the peaceful population of the three villages and surrounded areas in the Benka Circle were the object of cowardly and barbaric terrorist attack during the night of 18th to 19th June 2022. A total of 132 civilians were killed by fighters of the Katiba Jumasina of Amadou Koufa, with several of the perpetrators formally identified.
The killings happened when several villages in the Bekas area were attacked on Saturday and Sunday. 3 days of national mourning starting Tuesday have been declared by the head of the ruling government, Assimi Goïta. For several weeks, rebels in central Mali have been blocking the road between Mopti and the northern city of Gawa. The attacks show that violence is spreading from Mali's north to more central areas like Bekas.
Donc, comme vous le savez, il y a eu
2 weeks ago, the army was on the ground doing patrols. Following these patrols, there were clashes with the terrorists. There were deaths of men on the terrorist side, about 12 people. After the return of the armed and security forces to Bankas on Friday around 4 p.m., the terrorists came, about 50 to 60 motorbikes to take hostage the city of Dialasagao.
vers 16 heures, ils sont des Maliens.
They are Malians, farmers, pastoralists, who have nothing to do with politics, with political struggle, and people without faith and dignity will take them and liquidate them.
Vont les prendre et les liquider.
On the other hand, the United Nations peacekeeping mission in Mali issued a statement expressing its condolences to the families of the victims and to the government of Mali, and condemning the attacks, which it says there are serious violations of international human rights and humanitarian law. Several hundred civilians and more than 270 peacekeepers have died in the attacks in central northern Mali, making it the UN's deadliest peacekeeping mission ever.
Still with the shooting, gunmen killed 8 people and kidnapped 38 others in an attack on the 2 churches in the northern state of Kaduna on Sunday. Weeks after a similar deadly attack in the southwest, the attack occurred during the morning service of a Catholic and Baptist church. The state police spokesperson and Kaduna's commissioner for internal security did not immediately respond to requests for comment. East African leaders met in Kenya on Monday for discussions on how to stop renewed fighting in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The meeting comes as insecurity in the region is in a critical state, especially with tensions between Congo and Rwanda. Congo accuses Rwanda of supporting the M23 movement, while repeatedly Rwanda denies the accusations. The National Council for Human Rights emphasized Monday in a message on the event of International Day of Refugees celebrated on 20 June each year on Algeria's continuing concern to improve the level of services provided to refugees in order to preserve their dignity. Algeria has been elected Monday chair of Union of Arab Economic and Social Council and a similar institution for a 3-year term. This election was announced at a press conference held on sideline of the Extraordinary General Assembly of the Union of Arab Economics and Social Councils and similar institutions. This comes months before the Arab League Summit, which will be held in Algeria on the 1st and the 2nd of November 2022. Addressing the African Union, President Zelensky of Ukraine on Monday called Africa a hostage of the ongoing conflict in the country. The blockade of Ukraine's grain exports have sparked grain and fertilizer shortages and put millions of people at the risk of hunger. Volodymyr Zelensky said that his government was engaged in complex negotiations to unblock grain reserves trapped in Ukraine's Black Sea ports.
Africa is in fact a hostage. It is a hostage of those who unleashed war against our state. Yes, this is a war. Russia's war against Ukraine. It's neither a crisis nor a conflict, as it is sometimes defined. No, this is a war, a brutal war and aggression.
The Russian journalist Dmitry Muratov's auction of Nobel Peace Prize sold for $103.5 million on Monday night. Dmitry has said that proceeds will go directly to UNICEF and its efforts to help children displaced by the war in Ukraine.
Tonight, that amount is 100 million Swiss francs, which was the choice in currency. And it was a heritage bid increment approximation. So it's 100 million Swiss francs that has been contributed to UNICEF of Switzerland and Liechtenstein, to that organization, and will flow through to the international UNICEF organization and be distributed to aid in the refugee crisis in Ukraine and neighboring countries, and at that amount likely around the world, right? That is a tremendous sum of money, and it really opens up the doors for a more profound way to sort of address refugee crises and displaced peoples everywhere. That is a record for heritage auctions. It's a record for a Nobel Prize. It is a landmark achievement. It is certainly among the most significant donations to UNICEF that has ever been recorded as well, but I leave them to talk about that.
A conference on the humanitarian impact of nuclear weapons was held in Vienna, bringing together representatives of states, international organizations, a scientific community to discuss and explore existing research on the humanitarian consequences and risk of nuclear weapons. The three-day meeting opened today amid rising fears over Russia's possible use of nuclear weapons during its military operation in Ukraine.
The prohibition of the possession of nuclear weapons and their elimination from the face of the earth is a moral duty before it is a solemn legal obligation. I earnestly hope that nuclear-armed states, all 9 of them, would initiate without further delay and preconditions the necessary negotiations and concurrently adopt the necessary measures that would lay the groundwork for the elimination of nuclear weapons forever.
An estimated 60,000 demonstrators gathered in front of Georgian parliament waving European and Georgian flags, days after the European Commission suggested waiting before granting Tbilisi candidate status. The rally goal is to send a signal to Brussels as EU leaders are due to discuss this week whether to grant official candidate status to Georgia as well as Ukraine and Moldova.
This gathering is an illustration of our unity and strength. We want to show our common conviction and say today that we are part of the European family.
And to have a clear idea of the demonstration in Georgia, I'm joined live via Skype by Mr. Georgi Mishkadivelli, associate professor at the European University from Georgia. Mr. Georgi, first, how can you consider this huge gathering of citizens that reached almost 140,000 demonstrators, as AFP just now stated? How can you consider this gathering?
Okay, good afternoon. Thank you very much for the invitation. As far as this rally is concerned, this is the massive message of, I wouldn't say the entirety of the Georgian population, but of the overwhelming majority of the Georgian population, that the country sees its future squarely in the ranks of the European Union and integrated in all European structures. So Georgia has been the member of the Council of Europe for 23 years, but you know, this pretty much the dream and the desire of overwhelming majority of Georgians is to see itself, to see the country integrated in the EU. All polls show that 75 to 80, sometimes, well, the number is like reaches 85% of Georgians want Georgia to be part of the European Union, and that was the main idea. So obviously, Georgia, pretty much the entirety of the population, okay, that majority which wants Georgia to join European Union, this majority is extremely disappointed by the decision of the preliminary decision of the European Commission and likely decision of the governments of the European Union, like to not postpone but like to condition the granting of the candidate status like to Georgia.
To this point,
So
Mr.
it
Georgi,
means that
I'm sorry
politics
to
still
cut your
got-
train of thought, but to this point, Mr. Georgi, to be an EU member, there are requirements you must fulfill. What kind of conditions Tbilisi is in need for to gain this membership?
Well, again, this only gaining the candidacy for the membership like this year. So, and then after the candidacy, well, usually it lasts several years depending on the country. Well, we have this unfortunate story of Turkey, which has been candidate for decades, but still without granting membership. But the practice of the latest enlargement shows that the status of candidates lasts few years, well, year and a half, 2 years maximum. So, conditions are serious and conditions are numerous. So to advance on the democratic front, to ensure political pluralism, to lessen the degree of political polarization which has been rampant in Georgia and blocks the political progress and political culture in Georgia for almost a decade already. So ensuring independence of the judiciary, very unfortunately, successive leaderships of Georgia failed to ensure the true independence of the judiciary. It has been always this pretty much appendix of the executive. And you know, these are only part of these requirements that are necessary to be fulfilled.
Mr. Georgi from Georgia, thank you ever so much for this clarification. Now, moving on to continue our news, France's opposition party said on Tuesday that an arrogant Emmanuel Macron will have to change tack and listen to them to win their support on a case-by-case basis after losing control of parliament. His centrist alliance won the most seats in Sunday's legislative vote, but fell well short on the absolute majority he needed to rule with a free hand during his second term after a first mandate known for his top-down approach.
It was a cordial but frank and direct exchange. I repeated to the president that there was no question for us of entering into what could be considered as a betrayal of our voters. We made a campaign in the opposition to its majority, in opposition to its government. We remain in the opposition, in a determined but responsible way. We will never be in the blocking of the institutions.
We had a so-called Jupiterian period when the president decided alone and where we had no account to give to anyone. Now, because he does not have a majority, he is forced to re-parliamentarize political life, and it's rather healthy in a country like ours to have to be accountable, to have to negotiate, to seek points of agreement that allow us to move in the right direction.
Thousands of members of indigenous communities and other groups demonstrated Monday in Quito, the capital of Ecuador, for an 8-day of protest against the price of fuel. Ecuadorian President Guillermo Lasso said on Monday that the indigenous movement, which has been leading anti-government protests for weeks, wants to drive him out of power and has decided to extend the state of emergency to 3 new provinces.
Last Saturday, I responded to a request from Qunai. Here's the letter. The response: more violence, more threats to attack Quito. We cannot allow a few violent people to prevent millions of Ecuadorians from working.
We're going hungry. If we don't have enough to buy, we don't have enough to give our children a snack. Right now, we don't even have anything to offer, even a crisp to our children.
Leftist Gustavo Petro became on Sunday the first left-wing president in the history of Colombia, with the ambition to change a country in a crisis which has never known such an alternation. The inhabitants of capital Bogota and Bucaramanga react to the election of Gustavo Petro, hoping for a prosperous change in the country.
Many of us believed it, those of us who had hope, and today, wow, it came true.
For me, Petro is everything, because he's a good person who stands with the poor. He's not arrogant. Petro gives everything to them, while the rich takes from the poor, which Petro doesn't allow. That's what I love about him.
In Nepal, around 100 protesters from All Nepal National Free Students Union clashed with police after they were stopped from rallying. Police fired tear gases and charged at protesters with sticks to break up a demonstration against fuel prices hikes. A 15-year-old boy was shot dead, and a police officer and 2 other people got injured in a music event in Washington, D.C. According to authorities, the officer was wounded in the leg, while the other 2 victims of the shooting were being treated in hospitals. No media reports revealed the cause of the shooting.
MPD members responded to the area to assist in the area, and at some point during the course of this gathering, there was some type of incident or fight that happened between some of the individuals who were in attendance. That incident was broken up. Shortly thereafter, there was a secondary incident. We're not unsure what that incident was, but people started to scatter at that point. MPD members shut the event down, began to shut the event down because it appeared that the event was unsafe at this point.
The Qatari Emir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani spoke on the second day of the Qatar Economic Forum as a global economic recovery after the COVID-19 pandemic and rising challenges such as food insecurity and the need for energy diversification were high on the agenda. Miriam Zian has more to tell.
The second annual Qatar Economic Forum, powered by Bloomberg, is taking place in Doha and was patronized by the Emir Sheikh Al Thani on Tuesday. The Qatari Emir expressed his hope to turn the COVID-19 page and encouraged the international community to achieve equality in economic recovery.
International community should have an approach that interprets the intentions, the positive intentions to enhance the economy and to achieve the targets of sustainable economy and to support the poor nations.
He also expressed concern over the impact of the growing grain and energy prices on the global economy. Heads of state, experts, heads of companies from Qatar and the world are participating in the event to tackle the world's most pressing challenges through a lens of the Middle East. During the forum, which aims at diversifying economy, Qatar Energy signed a deal with Italy's Eni on the world's largest liquefied natural gas project.
Following the signing of this agreement, our partnership will be in the shape of a joint venture company, in which Qatar Energy will own 75% of the shares, while Eni will own the remaining 25%. In return, the joint venture company will own 12.5% of the Northeast field.
Eni CEO said that the project's low carbon footprint appeals to the company.
We have a strong commitment in the transition, in the climate change, in the transforming energy, and this project is the same kind of commitment in the carbon footprint that is very low.
The North Field is part of the world's biggest gas field that Qatar shares with Iran. The forum will not only be dedicated to investments, but will also discuss topics such as environment and the role of politics and human rights in developing economies.
Crowds gathered at Stonehenge in south-west England to celebrate the summer solstice. The festival, which dates back thousands of years, takes place when the sun is at its maximum elevation. Solstices happen every June and December, occurring at the same time around the world and marking the year's longest and shortest days. Ladies and gentlemen, let's have a reminder for our main top stories. Britain's biggest race strike in 30 years kicked off on Tuesday as 10,000 staff walked out in dispute over pay and jobs that could pave the way for widespread industrial action. Macron's camp failed to win absolute majority in parliament and will now seek alliances with all parties. Ukraine is engaged in a complex negotiation to free its force from a Russian naval blockade, President Vladimir Zelensky said. At least 84 people have died in landslides, lightning strikes, and flash floods across India and Bangladesh in the past weeks, according to officials in both countries. That's all for now. Thank you so much for being with us. Take care of yourself. Bye bye.